the algorithm. In most asset classes, the future is largely unknown. Like in stocks, the futures market, derivatives, bonds, cryptocurrency, gold, oil, and other commodities. Sure, property definitely has its unknowns too, but there are 5 certainties for our housing market right now, and I'd like to go through them one by one. I'm going to give you further explanation, but basically they are inflation, and we believe that it's going to stick around longer than the RBA would most likely want it to. Interest rates will eventually fall. The scarcity of dwellings for both purchases and rent will not go away anytime soon. Rents will continue to rise. And lastly, good demographics and strong population growth will keep fueling demand for housing. Those are the 5 things I want to discuss during this video. They're all inevitable. So many people do kind of try to predict the future, and most of them fail. But these 5 profitable, real estate kind of tailwinds for investors are as assured as you basically forgetting someone's name right after they tell it to you, which I'm guilty of very often. So let's just have a quick chat and go through this together. Firstly, sticky inflation. We are edging closer and closer to the RBA's inflation target range. However, the return to this target is taking longer than expected. And we can see there, I'll just move my head out of the way, we can see there a 2 to 3% target range, and we can see CPI at about 3.8%. All right? Interest rates. So interest rates are most likely going to go down. When interest rates were in 2022 April, they were at 0.1%, okay? The average Australian mortgage has seen annual repayments increase by about $16,788. That's a huge increase for Australian budgets. A panel of 31 lending economists assembled by The Conversation from the ABC basically sees no cut in interest rates before the middle of the year, okay, which we've already passed now. We're in September. And only basically a slight cut in December. I actually don't think that's going to happen. I don't think we're going to see a cut in December. But they do believe enough to kind of trim maybe just about $55 off that $16,788 increase per month, which is nothing, right? And the average forecast is for the Reserve Bank from all these people. So that's what this chart shows you, all the kind of different forecasts and then the average. The average forecast is for the Reserve Bank to delay cutting its cash rate, keeping it near 4.35% until at least the middle of this year, which has already passed, and then cutting it to 4.2% by December this year, which I don't think is going to happen. Then 3.6% by December 2025, I think that's more likely, and then 3.4% by December 2026, which I think is quite likely. So we will see what happens there. There's more evidence that the Big Four are expecting rate cuts. You've got CBA, Westpac, NAB. So whether or not it actually happens is one story. How the idea of it happening is going to affect consumer sentiment is another. Number 3 is that supply is not keeping up with demand. So over the year to June 2024, 163,317 dwellings were approved. That's 18.9% below the decade average. And this is the lowest annual count since the year to March 2013. This graphic shows total listings change from the equivalent period last year. And the total listings are sitting notably higher across Victoria, Tasmania, than this time last year. Now, this data is about 2 months old. The CoreLogic's been slow with putting out the data, but this reflects definitely a softer market conditions where slower sales times are leading to an accumulation of total stock. At the other end of the spectrum, places like WA, where I was just in WA for about a week, a couple of weeks ago, and WA listings are far lower than they were last year. And that's reflecting very high demand relative to the rate of new listings added to that market. Again, what we can see here, number 4, now I'm talking about rents. And we can see the annual change in rents here. Obviously, WA's had the highest increase for the past 12 months at 12.6% for houses and also for units at 13.1%. So across the combined capitals, the increase for the past 12 months has been about 8%. For Perth, for the past 12 months, it's been 12.7%. So this is another reason why people are obviously being attracted to different capital cities, because we've had 13 interest rate rises since May 2022, and people are trying to look at properties that are going to minimize their holding cost, allowing them to stay in the market for a longer term. Number 5, and this is the last one. In January, Australia's population tipped over 27 million people. This is around 18 years earlier than the milestone was originally predicted, and this annual growth is 41% larger than the previous record in 2009. So during the month of January, we welcomed 55,000 new Australians to the country, and that's the most people that we've ever accepted in 1 month, according to the Australian Bureau of Statistics. And this data, I've gone through this before, but I did some further calculations. Demographersid.com.au, visit their site, got some great stuff on there. They estimated that Australia's population will increase by 9.2 million new people by 2046. Okay? Now, I know 2046 is a while away, but the vast majority of that 9.4 million, 67% in fact, of that population increase will actually reside in the 4 major capitals. Melbourne will get 23% of that 67% of that 9.2 million. 18% will go to Sydney, 14% to Brisbane, and 12% to Perth. And I just did the numbers quickly on all of them, but I'll just give you Perth as an example. 1.1 million new Perth residents is a 55.6% increase in their current population. So it's quite a significant change for these capital cities. Also, and this was so surprising to me, Australia's population is highly urbanized. That's not the bit that's surprising. With a high concentration of people living along the southeastern coastline from kind of southeast Queensland to Victoria. And cities in Australia continue to reign supreme, growing faster than regional areas overall. That doesn't surprise me, because a lot of people that watch this channel know that I'm not a fan of regional areas. But vital infrastructure like transportation, housing, education, healthcare, employment opportunities, they're all major draw cards. And despite kind of numerous attempts that we've seen throughout Australia's history to get the population decentralised from the capital cities, it's unlikely. People are going to just keep living there. We're going to start to see a more vertical living society, people living on top of each other, than people actually spreading out, I wager. Now, while Sydney and Melbourne are nearly twice as big as the next largest capital city, which is Brisbane, the rate of change in 2023 actually shows Perth as the fastest growing. Okay, so that was the part that was surprising to me, is that this chart shows you annual change in capital city populations from 2002 to 2023, so 21 years. Perth had the largest growth since 2002 of 56.6%. Brisbane has a close second place at 55.8. I was just very surprised by that. I didn't think Perth was going to actually beat everybody out. And by 2036, Melbourne is projected to be Australia's largest capital city. Not surprising, given that Sydney has a considerable surplus of people moving to live in other places in Australia. Now, I've been saying for quite some time, keep watching Melbourne. And I truly believe that it's going to be the next one to pop after Perth starts to cool down, probably over the next 2 to 5 years when we start to see that. And you'll start seeing me talk more and more about Melbourne, and I'll start referencing this video in a couple of years' time saying, I told you so, Melbourne was going to boom.